The following program is a real estate and mortgage show and does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Good evening and welcome to Your Home, Your Money with your host, Randy Rodney, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email. Our email address is yourhomeyourmoney101@gmail.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, right to your host of Your Home, Your Money, Randy Rodney.
Hello, y'all. I'm just checking out some numbers and seeing what's going on, reading the news to see what the eye catches for news right now. It seems that RBC is reporting that there's rising delinquencies with GTA, the Toronto area, leading the way in delinquencies. Now, that isn't too surprising. We have, if you've been following us, you would know that we've told you that the market is going to get worse. This isn't going to stop. This is going to continue to increase. We've been having pretty severe increases throughout the new year. And basically, what are they saying here? 23%. So according to RBC investor presentation, the 90-day delinquency rate in the GTA area is now at 0.39. Which was higher than what it was at 0.23, and Vancouver area is at 0.3. So the number overall is fairly low, but we can see it rising. Like it rising 7 points is quite a rise actually. However, because it was so extremely low before, it was almost negligent. Before it was like very close to zero, and then over time, as they jack up the rates then that's when the problems have started. And the thing is that the banks, the media, nobody really knows the extent of the problem because they're just not on the front line. So they only see it after the problem rears its ugly head. However, mortgage agents and realtors are seeing it right on the front lines. I could honestly say for everybody who wants to sell their home, there's probably about 3 or 4 that have to sell it. They don't want to. They would like to keep their home, but it's just not possible for a couple of reasons. One is because they have maxed the value of the home in terms of mortgage, because when they got the home, if at that time it was worth $1 million and they put 20% down, so they had an $800,000 mortgage, let's call it clean. And so now the value of that home is $800,000. And so they have absolutely no equity in it to be able to do anything. They've lost their $200,000 that they've put in it at that point. It's lost if they sell the home. But if they keep the home and they wait a few more years, 5 years or so, or 10 or so, or more, who knows, then they could recoup that money plus more. But if they're in a situation where they just can't afford the new rates because the interest rate has gone from has gone from, let's say, back then they could got 1.79, or let's call it just 2, but today they're looking at 4 to 4.5. So they can't afford that price increase. And for that reason, they need to sell their house because they just can't make the payments. However, if they were to sell their house after they add real estate fees, legal fees, they actually have to bring another check to the table to close. And so, because of this, people will let go of their home because to sell it responsibly, they would have to have a $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 check that they would write. So many people are just opting to just let it go and work on some other channel. I don't know. I would imagine it's got to be some form of bankruptcy because the banks are going to come after them for the difference. So this is really what's going on, kind of behind the scenes. There's also there's a real small, and it's just starting to pick up, marketplace where we saw that it was quite common in the United States where the house didn't value what was the mortgage was, and so they would sell the house with a contingency that the sellers could get out of their mortgage. So then, in the States, they called it a short sale. So the banks would discount the rate, assuming that they feel comfortable that if they were to pursue and go after the seller, that they would end up with the home and then they would sell it at an even lower price. And so it doesn't benefit the bank really to follow that procedure. So it may be better for the bank at this point in the transaction to maybe take less money and let the seller off and not go after the seller for the difference. So that's kind of like a short sale. It's a process that we're just now learning to negotiate and to help people to get through that. So that's kind of where the marketplace is going. That's just not going to change. It's going to get worse before it gets better. For those of you that do follow us, you know why it's going to get worse. For those of you that don't, it's really simple. There's a lot more transactions 5 years ago next year. So in other words, next year and then go back 5 years. So 4 years ago today, 5 years ago next year, there's going to be a lot more transactions, a little over 25, a little under 25,000 more transactions than there are this year that we have to contend with, that have purchased at a higher pricing than the people that their mortgages are coming due this year. So 5 years ago, the pricing was high, but not as high as it was 4 years ago. And so those people who are 4 years ago are coming due next year, because it'll be 5 years ago next year, and their pricing is even higher. Their interest rate was just as low, and they're going to be facing all the same problems of the people that are facing this year. So if you get that, I don't know if I explained that very well, but I hope you got it. If you didn't, let me know, and I will I will try to answer your questions. Now, my wife is not able to make it today. She's feverishly working on some offers, and unfortunately, we couldn't put them off for her to do the show. And she's going to also be having to drive and do the offers and that. So she couldn't drive, do the offers, and be here for the show. The first email that is in is from Donna, and hey, is the rum guy on tonight? He's a kick. Very stuff, exclamation mark. Thank you, Donna. And no, he is not going to be on tonight. He's asked us if he could join the show once a month, the last Tuesday of each month. And so we're working our way through something of that nature. The next email from Joyce. Hey, to the real estate show. It's all over for real estate news. Houses are selling for major loss in value. Why? Thanks. So you're asking why they're selling for major loss in value? So one thing I'd like to say, Joyce, is that not all homes are selling for major loss in value. It's really kind of dependent on the period of when the seller purchased the home. So right now we're really close to the top of the roller coaster wave going down, prices going down. So the people within the last 4 years, 5 years that purchased that kind of peak and low interest rates, and now we've got higher interest rate and there is no peak. And so the higher interest rates, what that's doing is that's restricting buying power for the people who are looking to buy a house, even though there's a lot less of them. It doesn't matter. Those ones who are looking to buy a house, they are stuck with with the interest rates that are out there now. Let's call it 4.5%. And so the buying power of what they can get at a 4.5% interest rate, and let's call it $1 million mortgage, they're looking at a much higher payment, a couple $1,000s more than if the payment was what it was 5 years ago. So if they would have kept the interest rate low, the buyers would be able to buy at with the carrying costs of 5 years ago, and there may be more buyers that would accept that. But today they have to pay a 20-30% premium because the interest rates are higher. And in some cases they can't afford it. In many other cases, they have to downgrade the home that they would purchase in order to have it fit their budget, so that they don't end up one of the statistics that RBC is quoting, that they are going to people are losing their home to power of sale. So hopefully I answered your question on why those people are experiencing a loss, the people who are, because they purchased at the peak and interest rates are high, and for buyers to be able to buy that, they need a more reasonable payment, but the interest rates are so high, jacking up the payments, so they just can't afford that, so they have to buy cheaper homes. And part of the offset of that is these people need to buy cheaper homes, and the sellers are going to have to take a little bit of a hit as well. So it's a combination. The buyer can't buy the home that they used to buy for $1 million. That's one. And two is that there's a lot less buyers around. With less buyers, and there's more sellers because new inventory is up 8%, but inventory overall is up 54%. And when buyers have more choice, that kind of drives down the price. There's less buyers and there's more choice, and that has a natural downward pressure on price. Thank you, Joyce, for sending that in. And then we have Booze. Hannah, hey, to your home, your money. No booze tonight? Nope, the boozer isn't here. We'll have to wait until he comes back and see what he does. But it seems like that would be a really good brand for him because everybody just jumped on that right away. So that's kind of interesting. So we have here from Tina. Hi again. Is Randy in the barbiturates? He sounds down. All okay. Okay, so here's what's happening with me for those of you that are, am I into barbiturates? No, what it is, and you're right, I am, I can almost hear it in my voice. There's not a lot I can do about it. My blood sugars are totally out of whack, and we really don't know what's happening. It's not good. All day I'm drinking water, and my blood sugars will drive themselves up, and the alarm goes off, and it's like between 13 and 18. It should be at 4.8. Is what most of you people walk around with, 4.8 to 6. And I'm between 13 and 18 or 26, depending if I eat pasta or something like that. So, so what happens is that the higher your blood sugar goes, the closer you move towards coma, blood sugar coma. So basically, my lethargic speaking is me working in that direction of becoming comatose. So, but that's not going to happen. I'm pretty. I got a pretty high tolerance for blood sugar, but I notice it's kind of weaker these days because of the pace in which I'm speaking. And the energy of which I'm speaking is fairly low for me. The next one is from Ray. Hey again, real estate. What is a short sale? And what was that you said? Okay, I don't know what you're asking me, what was that you said, but a short sale is when you're selling your home, but it does not have enough money to pay off the bank. So you're getting nothing, but the bank also is being shorted. And so in the United States, it was a big thing called the short sale. We're going to have to be adapting these type of principles here, these type of skill sets here, in order to help some homeowners to sell without being sued afterwards, or sell without having to write a check to close the home. And so that's where we're at. Not a lot that we can do about it. It just is what it is. So we do not have. We're officially in the month of June. We do not have the market stats. They will be out for next Tuesday, 100%, and then I will run down them. But they're not going to look too much different, I don't believe, than March stats. March stats are that sales were down 23%, and listings were up 54%. For those of you who took Economics 101, you're saying, oh, that sounds really ugly. And it does for sellers, but it's a good thing for buyers, right? So, when the market's going up and it's really heated, it's going up really fast, well, that's great for sellers, but it's not so great for buyers. When the market's reversing, that's better for buyers. And realistically, the market, we are actually a little bit shocked that the market's been holding tight for as long as it has. We honestly didn't think it was going to hold as tight as it did. Now, my wife, I believe it's my wife, or it could have been Amanda, somebody just sent in, I guess, an article that they're looking for us to read. And it says, real estate agent fined $14,000 for allowing the husband to provide licensed services. What? So a ABC real estate agent who allowed strangers to access a home without licensed supervision and then lied when questioned about it later is facing a $14,000 fine and a 6-month suspension. Wow. Okay. So, and that would make sense. So, I'm a little curious. So that's the realtor, and the reason for that is I think he was going through the husband in letting people go see the home without supervision, without a real estate supervision. And us as realtors, we are not allowed to allow people through the home without a bonded individual. So a licensed and bonded individual. And that includes the home inspection. When they're doing the home inspection, some home inspectors may be bonded or insured to be there, but the realtor must be there for those 3 hours or whatever it takes to do the home inspection. And it seems like this guy was cutting those corners. So he is getting a big fine and a big suspension as well. Kind of crazy. Thank you for the email, Jack. I believe it was Jackie. I'm not sure because it's just coming from our team. Okay. So average price. The average price. This is really where there's a bit of a shock over last year. It's down 4.1%. That is one of the heaviest drops that we've seen. So, is that going to weather? Because typically speaking, when we see a big drop, we see a slowdown of that drop or an increase in a month or two after, sort of leveling things out. However, I don't know if that's going to happen this time. And the simple reason is the business cycle of real estate. Business cycle of real estate is this: June, July, and August are the months where the home prices tend to be at their lowest. Transactions are at their lowest, and home prices therefore follow because there's less upward pressure and more of a downward pressure because transactions just aren't there. But if sellers need to sell, they will reduce in order to get sold. And so what we find is that June, July, August is typically speaking the low part of the season. So when we get sellers that call us, and for any of you who are calling your realtors, and they do not tell you this because a sale is a sale, we tell our sellers, hey, listen, do you have to sell in June, July, and August? Or can you wait for September and October because the transactions begin to increase again in those months, and therefore they can pick up a few extra dollars by waiting that time. Now, if you can't wait that time because of many different reasons, I don't know, a job transfer, different things, possibly going power sale, these kind of things, then you got to do what you got to do. You got to sell during those months. But if that's not the case, then as a seller, it may be better for you to wait. If you're in the GT area, for the people outside the GT area, if you're in the Kawarthas or something like that, then it's totally different. Their summer months is their hot period. It's cottage country, so that's when they're really doing well. But here in the GTA, we're a spring market. So a big part of that reason is because Canadians or GTAians, they are very kind of responsible with their kids. And so everything that they do, regardless if it costs them money or not, they do for their kids. See, when you have children, money, the whole money game changes. And so what they like to do is they like to buy the home in the spring so that when the kids finish school, they can move into their new neighborhood and make friends and be able to settle into their new school in the late summer, early fall. And so therefore they sell their home and buy their homes in the spring. And therefore we have all kinds of transactions that take place then, driving prices up. It's a great time to sell, not so great time to buy, with the exception of you do have more choice because that's when everybody is selling. Now, the average price, like I said, being down 4.1%, is something that we believe that we're not going to get a bounce back because we're running into the summer months. And in the summer months, as I just explained, is lower, lower pricing typically because transactions are very low. Canadians, or I shouldn't say Canadians, Torontonians, GTAians, are traveling to the Kawarthas and places like that to their cottage and vacationing, and they are doing all the fun stuff that families do, and therefore they're not out looking for homes, and therefore there's less demand. Days on market have gone up 22%, so we're now officially over. It takes more than a month to sell your home on average. Right now, on average, we have sales at 5,000, active listings at 27,000. So that's basically officially a 1 in 5. What that means is that only one home is selling for 5 out of 5 homes. So that means 4 people who have their homes on the market for sale will not sell. The 5th one is the one that's going to sell. So you got to kind of keep this in mind if you are trying to navigate the marketplace. It's not enough to be the second best or third best or fourth best price, because only 1 in 5 are going to move. And therefore, if you're number 2 or number 3 or number 4 or number 5, you are not going to sell. It's the number 1, the best value, that's going to move. So ideally, in a marketplace like this, you're really stuck. What's the best way to navigate this marketplace? Well, unfortunately, it is not easy to say the answer to that. And the reason being is because every community, and then there's areas within each community, has its own stats. And so the stats that in terms of the flow of the market, how fast it's moving, the competition, who are you competing against, and those numbers break themselves down into several categories. Categories like the detached homes will have their own category of how they're selling. The townhouses will have their category, semi-detaches will have theirs, and condos will have theirs. For example, if you were to take the downtown core and you were to take detached homes, well, they're selling like a 1 in 5, sometimes 1 in 4, sometimes 1 in 3, and rarely 1 in 6. But condos, they're 1 in 10, anywhere from 1 in 8 to 1 in 12, 1 in 13. For a condo to sell. So the type of market, so the type of property that you have, the location, it's not just the location in terms of the city, it's not just the location in terms of the community, it's also the location in terms of the area. Some areas are moving faster than others within the same community. Some areas are much more desirable than other areas, and therefore demand a different price point. So these are things that require a little bit of homework for the agent to be able to give you that information. And this is information that we actually give to all sellers even before we meet them, so that they can look at that. Then we come in and help them to understand it better in case they misunderstood, or maybe they had a full understanding, and we give them exactly what's available for sale, and that's their competition, what has sold like their homes, what didn't sell like their homes, because it's important to know what didn't sell too, because if you're going to try that strategy of someone who didn't sell, well, you already have proof in the pudding that that doesn't work. And if the market is going down, something that didn't work when the market was a little bit more active, it's definitely not going to work when the market has slowed down. And we're getting a slowdown every single month. Every single month is worse than the last month. And so we're on a roller coaster ride downwards. Why would that be important if you're selling? And we talk a lot about sellers because we actually specialize a lot in working with sellers, and so therefore we talk a lot about them. But why would that be important? That's just sort of another thing that is good for sellers to understand. And what it is basically, we spend the time to tell you, your type of home and your demographic within the community, within the area, and then we tell you the market conditions. And the market conditions are basically telling you what the slope is like. Right? Is it an upward slope, a downward slope? Is it moving quickly downwards, or is it a stable marketplace where it's just moving sideways? The reason why this is important, because if it's a downward marketplace and you're listing your home, now, 30 days from now, the pricing that you're seeing today is different 30 days from now. It's lower. So, for example, if you listed your home for $1 million last month and the market went down 4.1%, that's $40,000 decline in the marketplace, and you're going into the summer market, your property may only be worth $950 to $900 now. So it's really, really important to get that right and to position yourself to sell in a downward market, because you want to get the most amount of money, and the quicker sale in the downward market is where the more money is. Once you've passed that point of the value's not there, there's not a lot you can do about it. You're going to actually lose money by waiting. Now, we've got from Bob Smith, it's a long one. He says, so the Canadian Parliament got back to their so-called work last week. And the very first thing that person, or he called him an idiot, Carney does, is announce that he will be spending billions of dollars, $63 billion, on infrastructure in the country. Not homes, but bridges, roads, parks for green space, etc. Forget lowering the carbon tax, tariffs, taking care of the homeless, new hospitals, better medical care, lower taxes, more police protection, etc. With his plan, it is announced that the average Canadian will pay close to more than $1,500 more in federal taxes in the coming year. Thank you, Bob, for the email, but I'm not sure what the surprise is. We voted the Liberal government in. This is what they do. I'm not really sure where the surprise is. I guess the surprise is they're not giving, I don't know, I thought they would have given free haircuts to people who cross over the border illegally or something like that. Like, that would have been a bit of a shock, but it wouldn't have been a surprise. Liberals like to spend. It's their way of doing things. And unfortunately, we have voted in a Liberal government. And, I will be honest, sometimes it does work. Sometimes putting the people to spending money on infrastructure and putting people to work helps to stimulate the economy. It can. But I do agree with Bob that we have a lot of big problems that it would be nice if we were to try to attack. But that's not the case. Thank you very much, Bob, for your email. Now, sales to new listing ratio was at 36%. That is in buyer market range. Okay, so what that really means is that the buyers have a better hold on the marketplace. Buyers have more negotiation strength than sellers in many cases, depending on how the listing was set up. Buyers have the edge. Okay, now that's just the way it is. Months of inventory is at 4.1 months of inventory. So we're really kind of then saying not only in the sales to new listing ratio indicator are we seeing a move to buyer's market, we're also seeing it in months of inventory move to a buyer's market. And so that means that the market as a whole has shifted there. It used to be a little bit more fragmented. Months of inventory was really close to the seller's market, but in the balance, and sales and new listing was pretty much halfway, midway point. But since then, everything has been moving towards a buyer's market, which means for those of you who are out there, there could be some good news for buyers. And the good news being a couple of things. One, the interest rate of 4.5% historically is an absolutely incredible interest rate. You know, historically, it's a great interest rate. Really where the issue becomes is our pricing is just kind of high, which has an effect on affordability. But the interest rate is fairly low. We have gone through 2000 and let me just go back to this chart here. So if we go back to 2000 and where the peak, we're looking at peak 2022 being our peak of prices, 2021 being a pretty good pricing, and 2023 being really good pricing as well in terms of the average price. So if we go back to 2022, we as a peak, so we're looking at 3 years of prices coming down, and we are we are getting closer. In many situations, the market has turned around in 2 years or less of recent, with the exception of 1989, which is really could be what we're in. And in that case, it went from 1990 to 96. So it was a 6-year span. However, we are right in the middle of we're at the 3-year span, and actually in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, I believe 94, the market started to come back, and we had a 1% increase in the average price overall, and then it was either 94 or 95, but then 94, I believe, the market started to recover. So realistically, we went through 4 years of a real downward trajectory, and then the market did a peekaboo recovery, and then it went down again the next year, and then after that, from 96 on, all we did was get increases. So we were, the market was doing really well. It was increasing in terms of average price very quickly and evenly each and every year. So the whole thing took to get from where it was in the peak back to being even was about 10 years was the process. And 5 out of the 6 years was downward trajectory, and then the rest were upward. So we're within a year or two of that. But I honestly believe that next year is going to be a declining marketplace, and I believe that after that, we're going to have to see what happens. It could start climbing. We could start climbing out of it. And if that's the case, and I believe it is, but if that's the case, then this is a really unique time for buyers. They're really close to where the bottom is. The interest rates are pretty at 4.5 historically is extremely low. And we're somewhere close to the bottom. So it may be a great time to buy for buyers based on that based on that, and the fact that they have a lot of inventory to choose from. It's all kind of good news really for buyers, with one exception: the current prices. The prices are a little tough, and as many of our listeners have said, that doesn't matter what they do, they can't afford to buy a home during these times. So that is that. Your team, your home. Who is this? Mason. Hello tonight. Did you hear about this? A bunch of Markham seniors bought a life lease in an apartment building there, and now they're being told that they owe hundreds of more dollars per month for roof repair. Is this legal? Well, how are they going to pay for the roof if they don't charge them? Someone's got to pay for it. So is it that they win a lottery and therefore they don't have to pay anything? It's not really how that works. Someone has to pay for it, and typically when it comes to condominiums, it gets split amongst everyone. Otherwise, the condominium would go bankrupt, and if that's the case, like that's the alternative. So if you don't pay for the roof, someone has to, and if no one's going to pay for it, then they're going to go bankrupt. If they go bankrupt, it's over. They lose all their money. All their money, because the value of that property will be next to zero. You won't be able to get mortgages. You won't be able to get loans on it. You won't. It will be blacklisted, and therefore, when you go to sell it, there is no value at all in it. So the alternative is 1,000 times worse. And it's just the way it is, unfortunately, when you move into any shared kind of accommodations, even single, you have to share in those repairs. If it needs windows, if the driveway needs to be done, if the roof needs to be done, if a hurricane blows off siding and you want to have that put back on instead of having weather beaten in on the property, you got to pay everybody's got to pay in there. And then this one is from Grace. Hey, to Randy. Yes, Alberta is getting closer to ceding Canada. They want their own country. I think that is great. That's what he's saying. They give billions and billions of dollars to Ottawa to give to other parts of Canada, and Albertans suffer with terrible healthcare, essential services, and job losses due to not keeping their money in their own province. Now they want it back, and they should get it. Go, Alberta, go. And that is from Grace. Now, one thing I would say about that, Alberta's losing out on more than that, because you bring in Liberal government says, hey, we don't want gas anymore. We don't want there to be gasoline. So we don't want pipelines so you can export your goods. There's all kinds of stuff they don't want, because I don't know how to put it. I wish someone Liberal was here that could explain eloquently why it is that they choose not to lower our taxes or enrich Canada by utilizing our natural resources. They choose to have us walk on them, and that's just how they are. It's that they're I don't know what to say. I can only babble about it. I don't agree with it at all, but I feel sorry for Albertans. I feel sorry for many people because it would be nice if we had government that was a little bit more progressive, like what's going on in the States. And I know everybody hates to hear that, but their government is trying to help them to earn more money, to get rid of waste and abuse, to better their tariff situation with respects to the rest of the world. Yes, it doesn't feel good being outside of their bubble, and their bubble is within the United States. It doesn't feel good being outside of that and them changing the rules and this and that. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a dummy. But I don't think it's fair, the tariff situation that they're facing. Personally, everybody's tariffing the heck out of them and basically cheating with free trade. Like, you're boosting up certain economies and certain industries and that, and sheltering them within your country, and that's not free trade. And so, unfortunately, and I wish my brain didn't work the way it did, but they've got a really, really good point. Their messaging sucks, okay? The way in which it's being said is very uncomfortable and easy to hate. And so maybe that's one of the reasons why Canadians want to hate on them. But Alberta's in a tough situation because if they do leave Canada, they're going to do a lot better. They're going to be able to make some choices that are going better choices than having to deal with the federal government that they're dealing with to be able to utilize their natural resources, which are very valuable now. And so who knows what will happen? We'll see. Thank you for your email, Grace. I'm not sure if they're going to do that, but I guess we'll see. I really think that Carney is going to probably jump in there and know that he needs their money and then start to be a little bit more, I call it responsible with earnings. Earnings, the money that we need to earn for all Canadians. Our taxes are incredibly high and they're going up at the speed of light in the last couple of years. But, our government's talking the opposite. They're talking about affordability, that they want to make housing more affordable and things like that. But meanwhile, they're jacking up taxes and jacking up permit costs and all this stuff. Like, how does that make it more affordable? I have no idea. Well, it doesn't. So this is from Lori. What is the interest rate here in the GTA? You're looking at somewhere in around the 4.5%. When we're doing our promotions, because every time we list a home, we do a special promotion exclusively for that home. It's not for all customers, but for that particular home. Right now, what we're doing is 4.09. Exclusively for that home. So what we're trying to do is for that home, make it more affordable than the other homes in the neighborhood. And we do a bunch of little marketing things like that in order to help our clients to have a home that can beat out the competition, can have a better chance of selling. And so that's one of the things they do. So you're looking at about 4.5% on the marketplace. But if you were to pick one of our listings, you'd be able to be around 4.09 as an interest rate. Thank you very much, Lori, for asking. Yeah, that's it for the emails. The other little things that we do in that case is we'll do special promotions for the home so that our seller home is more desirable than its competition. We'll certify that home, which just basically means that your air conditioner, your furnace, your fridge, your stove, the washer, dryer, all the appliances within the home are insured. So that the buyer has some peace of mind when they move in during that, first 6 months that they're there. Money can be a little tight because they just bought the home. They just had to move into the home. They probably had to do a little bit of work on the home. They had to have the closing costs for the home, the legal fees for the home. And so they're doling out cash. So it's nice to have some stability within the home. And we insure them up to $15,000 worth of insurance. And again, this is just to be able to make the house more saleable, a better value than its competition, so that our sellers have a better chance of selling than the rest. The other thing that we do also, we are fortunate enough to have special deals on different things. So at the Brick, you can get up to 40% off on their furniture when you're purchasing that home. That's another little perk. If you're going to paint it, you can get 30%, I believe it's 30% off at Glidden Paints. And then there's other things. If you like EQ Furniture Store, we get a discount there. There's a bunch of stuff that we give as extras to help the buyer to be able to save money while they're going through the processes that they need to do. So so that's what we do, and thank you again, Lori, for sparking that conversation there. Now, we're almost out of time. I got like 9 minutes, so I'm gonna just take this moment to just reflect again and drive home the reason why purchasing a house is so important. And I know it's hard. And if we were to say this right now, wherever you work, whatever it is, let's say you work somewhere in the GTA, I don't know, the east side of the GTA. Let's pick that. So now you may want to live in Scarborough, but the average price in Scarborough is around 1.2, 1.3, and you don't have the income for something like that, and you don't have the down payment for something like that. So you're like saying, oh shoot, that's no good. So, if you were to drive, let's call it 40 minutes from Oshawa to Scarborough, and you to say, okay, well, I'll do that in order to try to facilitate my family with a long-term investment that is ours, and an investment that we can actually live in. So, and some people are saying a house is not an investment, and I understand where they're coming from, because an investment, they're claiming, is something you don't have to put money into. They're saying, well, it's not an asset because you have to put money into it. It's a liability. An asset should give you money, and a liability you pay money for. And I'll agree with that. However, in terms of it being an investment, it's just the fact that you buy it today for X amount of dollars. So anybody 25 years ago, this is the time frame I'm dealing with, 25 years ago, if you bought your home, the home at that point would have been somewhere in the $300,000 range. And today, actually, it would have been a little less, but let's say $300,000, $250,000 range. And today, it's worth over $1 million. So you are, you buy for $250,000, you pay it off, and now it's worth $1 million. And you sell it, and you have $1 million in your hands. Or you don't sell it, and you're living in $1 million home, which would mean like someone who didn't buy the house, they're still paying rent, right? You're not paying rent now. You got, heat, hydro, which they got too. You got taxes, which they don't have. You have insurance, which they supposed to have insurance too. So, you don't have to pay a mortgage, but they have to pay rent. So you're already benefiting, even if you don't sell. But if you did sell and you had $1 million, now you have $1 million. And if they moved out because they can't sell, they still have nothing from that. And so because of that, I call it an investment. So that's one. Two is that if you were to say, okay, there are probably about 20 homes currently in Oshawa, and they've been turning over, and we've seen 20, every month or so, more and more coming out that are in the $500,000 range. Now, they're not the best neighborhoods, but I will tell you something about buying in neighborhoods that may not be the best. Toronto. That's 25 years ago, that's the way it was. There was some really bad neighborhoods. And because of the price of homes, you had Regent Park, you had Riverdale, you had places where it wasn't that great. But the prices of homes went up, different people moved in, and the neighborhoods changed. And I would say the same thing is going to happen for a good majority of Oshawa. So you take $500,000, which means you need $25,000 down. You're going to need another, let's call it $8,000. Let's call it $8,000 in closing, roughly speaking. So you're going to need $33,000 to move into that home. Okay, so and you're going to need about a $60,000 to $70,000 income, I believe. And now you're living in your own home that in 25 years you would have paid off for it and owe nothing. And now you either don't have to pay anything to live there, or you sell it and it should be worth at least $1 million. You've doubled up on your money. And that's really that's really it. That's really the big bonus, the big difference between renting and buying. And so the rental price on a $500,000 home with 33% down is, let's call it $2,500. I didn't work these numbers out, but I believe it's a lot less than that. But it's about $2,500 a month. Right now, to rent a house costs $2,500. So it's a relative move. Now, the house, it won't be in the best of neighborhoods for that. But these are some of the sacrifices that we make as with long-term vision to be able to get into the game. Once you get into the game and your $500,000 house, let's just pretend that you're just starting out with your wife. You don't have kids or anything like that. And in the next couple of years, you're going to have kids. And then they're 2 or 3 years old. They're about to head off to school. You want to be in a better neighborhood. Okay, so that's where you're in the game. You sell, or you sell and you move up. At that point, now you have double income. You have your income, wife's income. So now you qualify for something different, something bigger, and that's kind of the game. And you slowly make that move upwards, or the best thing that you could ever do is to be thinking long term, stay in that house until you pay it off. And that's when you're the big winner. Or what I've seen others do is that they would keep this $500,000 house and rent it out. But renting out today is kind of a difficult task because of $829, all of the rules for rental. But I will tell you on another show how we can help you to feel secure in having tenants rent your property. Thank you very much for listening today. This has been Your Home, Your Money in Our Lives on realityradio101.com. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Your Home, Your Money with your host, Randy Rodney, right here on Reality Radio 101.